Hi everyone, welcome back to the video presentation Navigating Through Uncertainty. This is the second part where we will be talking about managing emotions. Emotions form an important part of our life. It guides almost all of our decisions. It can influence our political opinions, it can influence our economic choices, social relationships, our family relationships, basically our interpersonal and intrapersonal relationships within ourselves and also with others. So managing emotions becomes a very important aspect to ensure that we have a good mental health and we maintain that good mental health, and also to help other people who are going through any sort of turmoil in terms of their mental health. So managing your own emotions gives you a way to manage others' emotions, because you know how to deal with yourself. You can help others to deal with their own emotions. First thing we need to know is what are the basic emotions. Now there are many theories giving more than these 6 emotions, but we will stick to this simple theory so that it is easy to understand. The 6 basic emotions are to be happy, sad, anger, fear, disgust, and surprise. Why do we have to know this? You will get to know as we go through the steps involved in managing our emotions and to regulate our emotions. Now, if you'd observe fans in your home, it will have a regulator which will allow you to increase and decrease its speed as per your comfort. If it is too fast, maybe the papers are flying in the air and it is too cool, because of which you're not feeling comfortable or you're feeling uncomfortable. So you reduce the speed with the regulator. If it is too slow, maybe again you are in a discomfort. So you regulate the speed of the fan accordingly to give you comfort. Same way, emotions to a good extent can also be regulated. And this regulation of emotion can also be called self-regulation. And it is an important part of maintaining your mental health, to maintain a good mental health. Let us go through this process step by step so that you can by yourself regulate your emotions. So the step 1 is to identify which emotion you are experiencing. So to identify the emotions, as I say identify your emotions, it may not be as straightforward as that. Often in therapy sessions, when I conduct counseling and even when other counselors conduct counseling, when you ask a person what they are feeling, very often they may not be able to pinpoint that, okay, this is the emotion that I'm feeling, but they vaguely understand what they are feeling. This is because we take our emotions for granted. It is like fish swimming in the ocean. If you were to ask the fish, where is water? The fish may not even understand the concept of water until it is taken out of the water. Then the fish would find it very difficult to survive. The same way, the emotions are taken for granted. It is all around us. It is guiding our decisions. Every day we are guided by emotions. Even the most rational decisions is directed towards an emotional end. So emotions form a very big part of our life and our decisions. So that is why the first step is to identify the emotion. And to identify, there are these 4 pointers you can focus on so that you can get to know which emotion you are facing. For example, body sensation. If you are overwhelmingly angry, or if you are so angry, then sometimes you may be able to feel it in your body. So next time you are angry, happy, or sad, try to feel or try to figure where you are feeling this emotion in your own body. For instance, sometimes when you are afraid, you might feel something in your stomach area or in this chest area, a kind of a churning of the stomach. Sometimes. For different people, it could be a different experience. And for anger, maybe it's sort of a tightness of the body, a little tightness of the muscles of the shoulders, maybe. For different people, it's different experience on the body. Or it could be an increased breath rate. For instance, somebody hits your car or bike from behind and they come out. And at that moment of time, you don't really know if this person is coming to, sort of be the aggressor and attack you, or coming to say sorry. So at that moment, your heartbeat might race to just figure out, if this person is a threat, or is this person coming to compromise, or, coming to say sorry. So you don't know. At that moment of time, a body sensation rises up. Could be an increased heart rate. The same way, if you were to go on a roller coaster, the heart rate increases, right? That is a body sensation. So at that point of time, you can also use a pointer of thoughts. What are you thinking at that point of time? Any overwhelming situation or any situation, even at this point of time, what are the thoughts going in your mind? This can point you to the emotion that you are feeling. The thought process, what is going? Maybe in the case of this person hitting your car from behind or your bike from behind and coming out, at that point of time, what is going through your head? Is this person, what is he coming out? How is he looking? This guy looks like a very hefty fellow. He might beat me up. What is the thought that is going through your head? Or when a person commits a crime, what are the thoughts that are going through your head? Like, get away from it. What if I get caught? Oh, these are thoughts. All thoughts. So when you're happy, what are the thoughts in your head? Thoughts relating to emotions. And then the feeling. Now, a very interesting part about emotions is you can consciously feel an emotion, but sometimes you can also unconsciously feel an emotion. Well, unconscious emotions tend to be unconscious at times. This can be observed when you're tired from work and frustrated. You don't really know that you're angry, but when something happens, then you get tipped off and you may say something out of anger. So at that point of time, you didn't really realize you were angry, but you were angry. So you would say something like you're feeling irritated or you're feeling frustrated, something like that. It's a feeling. You feel something which may not be directly the emotion, but underneath that, it is the emotion. Right. So then there is images. The images that come to your mind. For instance, if you have the image of, let's say, you're sitting alone and sitting like that with your hands around your head, maybe that is an image where you're feeling a little hopeless about the future, or any instance. For example, in the same person hitting the car and hitting your car from behind and coming towards you, the image may be this guy getting angry or coming with an angry face. And it may be that it's not a guy, but it's a woman coming out of the car. You imagine a lot of things, and it comes in the form of pictures in your head. So what is that image that comes to your head when you're going through this overwhelming event or a situation? So these 4 pointers are there. So the first thing is to identify the emotion. You identify the body sensation, the thoughts that occur in your head, the feelings that you feel, and the images that come into your mind. Now, all of this may not come together. Whatever comes to your conscious mind at that point of time, please note it down. To start off, it's good that you start off slowly, because if you are somebody who has not been doing this process or who have not been doing this before, it tends to get a little difficult. For some people it might be easy, so it depends on how they are currently processing their emotions, so currently how they are managing their emotions. Generally people do this, but we are going to take it apart and go step by step, so that those who know can refine it, or those who don't can incorporate this. So first thing is you identify the body sensation, thoughts, feelings, images, and try to label the emotions. Give the emotion a name like happiness, sadness, anger, fear, disgust, or surprise. What is that emotion that you are feeling at that time? This is the first step. Let's go to the second step. The second step is to acknowledge and accept what you find. So often, culturally there are certain things, like for instance, in our culture, if a man is feeling sad, so the men don't tend to express that sadness. It often takes a more socially acceptable way, like maybe anger. So a man can be sad and he can say, I'm very sad, I'm very disappointed that you did this. So instead, this man, who is sort of conditioned by the culture to not show sadness, might show it in an angry manner. You say you did something wrong. It can go in an angry manner. Even if the person is sad by what he has done, it may still take the form of anger because it is more socially acceptable, right? So because society is molding the way we express our emotions and the way we behave with each other. Society the social influences, our family, culture, everything is molding these. So a simple emotion like sadness might come off as anger. That could be because at the first instance sadness is not accepted. Maybe the person is like, I can't accept sadness. So in the brain some processes happen, and but you can accept anger, and people also accept anger, so you can put out anger. So so this kind of process takes place. But if you could acknowledge that it is sadness and accept that it is sadness, that kind of takes a lot of weight away from any person. I mean, this isn't an example of a man, but in the example of a woman, let's say, it could be anger. When women get angry and show anger, people often take it out of context. In some instances, they might even call it as mood swings. The woman is having mood swings, or they label things, which only tend to make this woman more angry. So that anger, in order to not show it in a more socially acceptable manner, it might turn into sadness. It is converted to sadness because you can, for a woman in the society, it is acceptable to be sad. So if you were to see me sitting on the side of the road and crying, probably nobody would look at it, look at the person, because it's a man crying on the side of a road. Why is he being weak? Why is he so weak? He should be strong, right? So nobody wants this. Nobody wants to be ostracized or pushed aside. So that man will not cry, especially on the side of the road where everybody can see, right? And for the woman, if the woman is getting angry and shouting on let's say on the same roadside, now people will be like, what is this woman? So egoistic. Maybe she's having mood swings. All sort of things are labeled. So of course, obviously nobody wants to hear this. So the woman would take a much more socially acceptable emotion. It's not healthy because we are sort of encouraging people to not acknowledge their emotion in its raw form and accept the emotion, but rather put it in some other way and put it out, which is not really, if you do it enough number of times, it becomes unhealthy. 1 or 2 times it happens, fine. But when you keep doing it, it becomes a sort of a social norm, like how it is today. Because the importance of acknowledging and accepting emotions comes in this very important step of to being able to regulate that emotion and to manage this emotion. But when you put a mark, or you put a standard that you can't cry, you can cry, you can't get angry, but you can get angry, that sort of messes the mental health of people. So that is the second step, which is to acknowledge and accept what you find. If it is sadness, let it be sadness. Don't turn it into anything else. But personally accept it. That is not a healthy behavior to label like, oh, you're having mood swings, or you're not a man. All these are unhealthy labels that we sort of learned, but we have to unlearn it. We can't just stick to the old behaviors just because okay, we are okay today, so this is what we have become today. That's not a good reason. You have survived it, but that doesn't mean that you also put it on the other person. I've got beaten up, so I will beat you up. That's not the thing. You don't transfer those kind of things to the next generation. We have to adopt a much more healthy outlook and healthy methods, because we have the information now. Then there is no information, but today we have the information, which is why we have to incorporate the new information, which can make which can make the coming generations a lot more effective and a lot more stronger than the previous generation, and also be ready for the new challenges that are there. The step 2 is to acknowledge and accept the emotion that you find based on the first step. The third step is to take an informed decision on the emotion regulation method. Right? To take an informed decision. All these while, maybe whenever we feel angry, or whenever we feel sad or happy, or whichever emotion, we tend to go into a default mode. Oh, I'm happy, let's go for a party. No, I'm angry and I'm sad. Maybe I'll go eat something good so that I feel better. So these are things that we sort of picked up by ourselves, by trial and error maybe, or we seen somebody else doing it, and it kind of feels good maybe at that point of time. It helps. But are these informed decisions? Do you know the consequences of what would happen if you do that particular step and what are the advantages and disadvantages of that step. You're taking an informed decision when you know the positives and negatives of a step, and then you, based on that, you take a decision. That is an informed decision. So there are many emotional regulation methods. Some of them you might already be using, or you have used at some point of your life, or you would in the future be using. We will take a look at all these steps, take a look at the advantages and disadvantages of these steps, and I leave it to you to use these methods. In all likelihood you are using these methods, but to use these methods more deliberately as an informed decision rather than a sort of a reaction. If something happens, you react to it. Something happens, again you react to it. But rather than reacting to it, you can take an informed decision. You know that this is happening, but you've already prepared that, okay, if this happens, I'm going to do this, and this is going to make me feel better. This would come from an informed decision. To live life a little more deliberately, to live more mindfully of the choices that you are making. So, to go further into this third step, let us look at the emotion regulation methods and the advantages and disadvantages, so that you can choose your own method in whatever situation that occurs, which should lead you, if you make the correct the informed decision, informed choices, which should help you to improve your mental health or maintain the mental health in the good state that it is. So these methods can be divided into thought focus methods and behavior focus methods. Thought focus, of course, means that you are focusing on your thoughts. Behavior is you're focusing on your behavior. Focusing on thoughts involves thinking, changes in your thinking. Behavior, changes in your behavior, or something that you do which helps you. So here you see eight methods. There is avoiding, thinking about the problem, avoiding the problematic situation, thinking about something pleasant, doing something pleasant, or demanding. So these four takes you away from the situation that is causing you this challenge. You're going away from it. You're not dealing with it face on. You're like, I don't want to deal with it, I will do something else. And the next four, if you see, trying to see the problem from a different view, talking or writing about it in an open way about how you feel, thinking and to find a solution to the problem. You think and find a solution to the challenge that you're facing, or to take an action to solve the problem. So all these four methods is pointing towards facing that challenge that you're facing, to confront the challenge. So on one side you're going away from the challenge, on one side you're coming close to the challenge. So the first four boxes that you see involves to go away from what is causing you these emotions. The bottom four involves coming close, coming towards. 4 steps going away, 4 steps coming towards. Let us look at this in detail, rather the negatives and the positives, so that you can make an informed decision. The first thing, of course, we are looking at is the technique or the method of avoiding thinking about the problem. So what are the benefits of avoiding thinking about the problem? The advantages is that it provides a temporary relief from that situation. It is effective for temporary problems. For example, let's say that maybe you have an exam or a test or an interview coming up. Immediately when you think about it, you feel anxious about it, like how it will go, will I get the job or not. But temporary relief is to avoid thinking about the problem, right? Simple as that. But let's look at the disadvantages of doing that now. It is very challenging to suppress thoughts, and it may rebound. So when you hold a rubber band to, you pull it to both sides to extend, when you leave it, it will collapse at a fast rate. So that is rebound. So when you suppress your thoughts, there are chances that it might rebound. And it does not always solve the problem because you sort of avoided the problem, right? So these are the disadvantages. The advantage is temporary relief and effective for temporary problems. But for long-term challenge is going to be very difficult because it may rebound. When it rebounds, it gets stronger. So now you are in a bigger soup than you were in the first place. So it doesn't always solve the problem. So these are the advantages and disadvantages. You become the chooser to really take up this method or not. Let's take a look at the next method. Avoid the problematic situation. Advantages are that it provides a temporary relief again from temporary challenges and effective for temporary problems. For example, you are called to talk on stage, but you are not very comfortable talking on the stage in front of a crowd. If it is only one time, you can be like, I don't want to talk about anything on stage. Somebody else can fill in for me. Problem solved. You avoided the situation, or you don't even go to the event. Worst case scenario, problem solved. But the disadvantages are that if you have a job that involves you going on stage and talking to people, now you cannot avoid the problem, right? So it's less effective for recurring challenges. That is a disadvantage. See, every day you have to go and talk in front of people. That's very less effective. How many times will you avoid it? And you may not learn to manage the challenge. You may not learn to speak in front of people by avoiding the problem situation. It doesn't always solve the problem. It doesn't solve the problem. It helps you manage your emotion by not going there. In some situations, this is very effective. Like, for example, if you are going to meet a person who you know is going to be a very toxic in nature, who's going to give you trouble, and if you think you're going to meet him maybe once or twice a year, and you're going to skip this meeting, you can do that. You can always skip that, or you don't want to talk to this person who is a bully. It's easy to just block that person on social media. There you go, problem solved. Avoid the problematic situation. You don't even have to have a chat. So in some cases this is effective, some cases it is not, just like the previous one, avoiding thinking about. But to avoid thinking, it may rebound, so it may not always be the best choice. So here you have the advantages and disadvantages of avoiding the problematic situation, right? So then we go to the next method, which is to think about something pleasant. Now we often do this. If you were to sit in a lecture, or if you were to sit in a very boring talk in a very boring place, then our mind sort of goes into a different fantasy world. It's a daydreaming type, right? So this is not exactly daydreaming, but we often see ourselves doing this. For instance, when we were in that COVID situation, stuck at home, lockdown was there, people were thinking about times when they could go to the beach, because that is one place many people miss. They could go to the beach, right? Think about going in the beach, getting that ice cream, ignoring all the waste is around, polluted beach. So the garbage that is there, ignoring all that. The beach in our imagination is a clean beach. So you think about something pleasant during that difficult situation. So let's take a look at the advantages. It's a temporary relief from, again, temporary challenges, and it is effective for temporary problems. If you have to go through that situation only one time, once in a while, or maybe you just have to go through it once a month. So at that point, you have to wait in a queue maybe for your license. Maybe you have to wait in a queue for your license. At that point of time, you're waiting for a long time. You take that, think about something pleasant, maybe about, now I can drive, and then I can be driving on the road, something like that, something pleasant, or going home and having that piece of sweet cake that you have kept in the refrigerator, anything pleasant. These are the advantages. So effective for temporary problems, temporary relief. Disadvantage is that it can turn into a habit if it is overdone. So every day you have the same situation, every day you go there, instead of focusing on the situation, you are thinking about something pleasant. Basically, you are sort of taking your mind away from reality and putting it into fantasy. So it can turn into a habit. So the next time you really want to focus, because you are so used to taking your mind off and going to a pleasant place, you might end up doing that in situations which require your attention also. Or you might miss out on information. Again, here also, the second point is, you may not learn to understand or manage the challenge. Because every time you put in the challenge, you're imagining something, taking yourself to an imaginary pleasant place, thinking about something pleasant. Again, it doesn't always solve the problem. Doesn't always solve the problem, because if it's a temporary problem, you do it once, the problem is gone. So you don't really have to solve the problem. And next thing is doing something pleasant or demanding. So again, this also provides a temporary relief from temporary challenges. Effective for temporary problems, effective to some extent for long-term challenges. to some extent. Sometimes when you're stressed out, your doctor or your psychologist might say, try going for walks when you're stressed. Something pleasant. Walk should be pleasant experience for the people who do that. So it becomes pleasant, and to some extent sometimes it becomes demanding also. Go for a run, marathon. So these help regulate your emotions. To some extent it is good for long-term challenges. For example, you're having you're having some trouble, you're having an argument with your spouse. At that point of time you're very stressed, and at that point of time you go out for a walk and then you come back, or you go for a ride in your bike and then you come back, you feel better. Now the advantages are these, and the disadvantages are that it can turn into a habit if it is overdone. So every time you have a fight with your spouse, you take your bike or car and go for a ride, it's going to make a hole in your pocket. Petrol prices and diesel prices have gone up, so very soon poverty might hit you. So situations like that, if it is overdone again, it becomes a habit. Every time you can't get out of your house in situations like that, and there is a physical limit to the amount of running that you can do, amount of working out in gym, if that is something people are doing, or to even walks. What if you're in a situation that you're not able to walk? If you're not in a situation to do something demanding, then it becomes an issue. And also some people derive a lot of pleasure from having good food. So of course having good food is good, but if it turns into a habit that every time you're feeling stressed or every time you're feeling angry or any emotion, then you have food, it is possible that it can give you health problems. It can turn into maybe an increased cholesterol or increased in overweight issues, because you're eating a lot when it turns into a habit. Again, this also you may not learn to understand and manage the challenge, because you're not really facing the challenge. The challenges happen, you take a break from the challenge. It's more like taking a break, so that it is effective. The break is effective, but for certain challenges you need to understand the challenges and go accordingly. So it doesn't always solve the problem again. Sometimes it does solve the problem, but not always. Let us take a look at the next method. So try to see the problem from a different view. So now this step and steps here on involves that you take a look at the challenge. You face the challenge and then you figure out. You have to take the challenge, understand it from different angles, then you manage it. All the 4 steps before, you didn't do that actually. You saw the challenge just at the surface level and then you avoided it, or you did something else to distract yourself. You diverted yourself or distracted yourself. From this step onwards, you are taking the challenge and observing it and trying to understand it in a different way. So the advantage of trying to see the problem from a different view is that this provide a more sustaining relief from strong emotions. Because you understood the problem, you are able to see it from a different point of view. It gives a better understanding, and it may lead to a solution because you have a better understanding. And it is effective to a greater extent for long-term challenges. For instance, when you were sitting at home again during lockdown, there was a sort of a boom in the online education industry and people were skilling up. So for some people who were able to afford it, were able to enhance their skills and learn new skills that they have not done before. Some people started cooking for the first time in their life, and by the end of the lockdown, they become experts. So you try to see the problem which is stuck at home. You turn it into an opportunity by seeing that, okay, these are all the possibilities. Of course, this is there. It's going to be there for some time, but I can see it as an opportunity to learn. So you see the challenge from a different point of view. Therefore, you're not very stressed anymore because that situation is leading you to a good place. So the disadvantages are that some challenges require a solution and not just a different view. So now everybody does not have the privilege of sitting at home and learning. Right? If you lost a job and you don't have enough money to upskill, then what are you going to do? Try to see the problem in a different way. Try to see the opportunity. I mean, how would you say that? If a person is in poverty and you can't ask them, why didn't you upskill? Because they didn't have the means to upskill. They did not have enough food coming in. So they're trying to see the problem from a different view may not be possible, because the problem requires a different solution. It may help to a certain extent, but to the challenges that require a solid solution to be implemented, simply trying to seeing it from a different view may not help. And it may take more time to develop, because again this involves understanding the challenge, so it may take some amount of time. It may not be that quick. Initially, at least, you need to put in certain amount of effort to listen to other people, talk to other people, maybe talk to a psychologist, watch certain videos, or maybe philosophy, spirituality, or watch a movie, or listen to a song to get an idea, so that you can see it from a different view. And the next thing is to talk or write about it, especially openly, about how you feel. This is also a more sustaining relief from strong emotions, because you are expressing it through talking or through writing, and it gives a better understanding, because now you have put it on a piece of paper and you read it, and then you get a better understanding and a relief. And it may lead to a solution, because again you're trying to understand what you are saying and what you've written down. And it is effective to a great extent for long-term challenges. Often, you might have heard of freedom fighters who've been imprisoned, and they sort of start writing in the prison. So that is a form of regulating your emotions, putting your emotions, how you feel, on a piece of paper, or to talk about that to your family members or your friends, or to a counselor. Or that talking in itself becomes an emotional regulation method, especially if you talk to a counselor or a psychologist, because they are trained to handle such situation. They are professionals. Years of training has gone into their skills. Some of the disadvantages of this is that some challenges require a solution that is not just expressing one's emotions. So because you express your emotions, it is good. It gives you a great amount of relief, writing about it, talking about it. But then every time a challenge happens, every time you can talk about it, but sometimes you need to find a solution to it. Sometimes the solution itself can be talking about it, but certain situations demand a solution that is more than talking, but to actually do something, and do something to change the situation, or at least be in the action to change that situation. This also may take more time to develop, because often people are not used to talking about their emotions. Again, the same fish and the ocean story. And people are not used to writing about their emotions openly. Some people may do it, some people don't. Some people don't even believe that mental health is a thing. Mental health even exists. There are people who just take for granted mental health, and take for granted the fact that people have emotions. But it is very clear, if you look around you, that our reasoning is directed towards an emotional goal. So this may also take more time to develop. Start slow, writing about your emotions, writing about from the process of identifying the emotions, body sensation, thoughts, and images and feelings. Start from writing that, or to acknowledge that in yourself. And it requires some effort initially before it becomes easier. The first few times you write it, first few times you consciously do it, then the next times that comes, it becomes easier, because your brain is now used to processing it that way. Default process was there, but now you replace it with a different process, that is to identify the emotion, accept and acknowledge it, and then find a way to express it. That becomes easier as the time goes. Now, an example for this I've given, sometimes freedom fighters you've heard of, who have written about their experiences. And writing in itself, there is a separate psychotherapy connected to writing, and reading also, in fact. So even for art, so there are many ways you can talk about it, write about it, but there are even drawing a picture about it, or listening to story connected to it, or writing your own story. There are many ways you can write about it, and these are the advantages and disadvantages of doing the same. Of course, also talking about it. The next method is to think and find a solution to the problem. So now I'm not talking about implementing the solution, but to think and find a solution, to have a solution ready at hand. So this also provides a more sustaining relief from strong emotions. It gives you a better understanding and leads to a solution, because you have actually thought about it, you have read about it, about how somebody else had a similar issue, how they solved it in a different country. Somebody else had the same issue, how they figured out a solution, and then you compare it with your own experience, and then you make a new solution based on all these experiences. So you can see it requires some amount of learning also. It is effective to a greater extent for long-term challenges, because now you have a solution. It gives you a confidence because you found that solution, and you can apply the solution, and the problem will be reduced or it will be resolved. You'll be able to manage your emotions that way. Now the disadvantages of this is that not every challenge has a clear-cut solution. Some challenges have clear-cut solution, yeah, but some challenges don't have a clear-cut solution. It is a complex mixture. The complexity is so much that if you try to take it all at once, there may not be a clear-cut solution. That might lead to frustration. It may take more time to develop, especially curiosity. Kids have curiosity, but as we grow, we tend to lose certain amount of curiosity. Some people have retained it, and good for them. But curiosity means to look at a situation through the eyes of curiosity, to try and understand the situation in its entirety, to see the positives and negatives of the situation, and to see how I can maximize the positives that I get out of the situations and how I can minimize the negatives. So this takes more time to develop, because again it requires greater efforts to think, to learn and find solutions. It might sound like an intellectual approach, but if you put in the effort to think about the situation that you are in and to learn about the situation and to find solution, then some situations don't have clear-cut solution, but at least the process would give you that understanding of that challenge that you're facing, and this understanding in itself can be a relief. For instance, now we are at a time of a peak unemployment over the years. So if somebody is like, I'm not getting a job, that person may be skilled, they're not getting a job. Instead of blaming themselves, they can also be like, okay, it is a difficult situation, I might have to try a little more and go through many more opportunities before actually I can land something which is for me, because of the socio-economic situation, because of COVID. It is a little difficult to me, right? So you have to learn about this. Not everybody, the statistic is not right in front of us, right? First thing people tend to do is they blame themselves. So when you look at the socio-economic situation, then you would know that, okay, this is the socio-economic situation. In this context of reality, it might take a certain more effort on my side to land a job or to reach somewhere financially. So this requires, of course, learning and thinking. You take the data and think about the data. Why is it so? What has led to this situation? What is the future prospectus that I have if the situation continues, and what are the steps I can take? So this requires, again, thinking, learning, finding solutions. So which is why it might take a little more time to develop, which is why it might be a little challenging. But however, if you look at the advantages, sustaining relief, better understanding, and a better solution for long-term challenges. The next thing is to take action to solve the problem. So this is some people who call themselves action-oriented people. They see a situation, they want to do something about the situation. It's a kind of emotional regulation strategy. They see it, they don't like it, they want to do something about it, they want to take action. That's taking action to solve the problem. Again, you may have also been in this situation where you feel like, okay, I need to take an action to solve the problem. Then you take action. Sometimes it may have worked, sometimes it may not have worked. So the advantages of this approach is that it provides a sustaining relief from strong emotions and the satisfaction that one is working to solve the problem. Because now you are no more sitting back and complaining, you are working to find a solution, or you are solving the problem, you are in the process. And it is effective again to a greater extent for long-term challenges. Now the disadvantages are that the action has to be appropriate. For example, if I feel threatened by my neighbor, I can't go and beat him up, right? Beating him up is not a solution. Hurting the other person, it is illegal to beat somebody up or hurting that person. So the action has to be appropriate. While action provides you certain relief, the action has to be appropriate action. And it may lead to frustration if the action does not solve the problem. So different people have different threshold for action. Maybe the action requires that you continue the action for a certain amount of months or years. But you reach a certain point and this person is like, hey, nothing is happening. That might lead to frustration because the action is not solving the problem. If they feel that the action is not solving the problem or the action is fruitless, it requires the will and opportunity to act and the effort also. So the will to act is, you see some issue, yes, I know what action to take, but you should also have that opportunity to act. You see people who are poor and starving, but you should have the opportunity to go and help these people. And if you don't have the financial, prowess or financial support, if you don't have a certain position of power to make policy changes, you really don't have the opportunity to act, or your opportunities are a little limited. Maybe you can provide them with, food for one time or a food for a week, but a more sustaining solution from your action may not be possible because of the lack of opportunity that you have, or you want to help somebody in a different continent. Again, to do that, you need to have certain opportunities, like you should have the right source online to make the payment, or to have enough money to travel there and help, if that is the kind of action a person is thinking about. And effort also. It requires effort from your side to take action. So these are the advantages and disadvantages of taking an action to solve the problem. Especially the action has to be appropriate. Any action will give you relief, but if the result of that action, if that action is inappropriate, the result is going to be inappropriate. People are going to be hurt. It can lead you to feel guilty, and guilt is not a very good emotion, or it's not a very good feeling. So obviously the brain will try to mask it because you don't want to feel guilty for a long time. So how does the brain or the mind mask it? The mind will mask it by saying that it was required. It will give reasons. It is required because it had to be done. All sorts of reasons. Often you see this in communal violence, where one community is attacking the other community, each other, and finally, if you go to the core of why the attack happened, people don't know. It's the actual reason is gone. It's changing from time to time, and then it becomes an attack on each other's identity. Then it gets very messy. So again, in community also, community A, community B, they want to regulate their emotions because they feel their identity is at threat. So identity is that threat is sort of like saying that it's a metaphorical attack or a metaphorical death type of possibility of a metaphorical death. Your identity is erased means that you don't exist. So of course anxiety will be there, aggression will be there. So people have to take some action to solve it. People would think, and if the action is inappropriate, the clashes happen in communal violence. So this can be applied in many places. Because communal violence is one thing that is happening around. So that example has been taken. So the action has to be appropriate in order to regulate your emotions. And a fun fact is that if you are secure in your own identity, to be secure in your own identity, to be secure as the person who you are, we need to be able to regulate our emotions. Because if emotions are balanced, then we can think rationally. Until that point, we are driven entirely by emotions. See, it's given that we are driven by emotions. All our rational processes or rational thinking is towards an emotional end. That is a given. Historically, that is a given, and that is how it is going to be as long as we have a functional brain. But if we can balance our emotions and regulate our emotions appropriately, then we can take more informed decisions, like how you would take decisions to manage your emotions like this. As you take more informed decisions, you will not take extreme steps. No extreme steps will be taken because you are able to think through it. You are balanced emotionally. You are not going to act out of impulse of an anger or out of impulse of sadness. Because there is balance in emotions, the action tend to be a balanced action. So this was our 8 methods for emotional regulation. You can choose based on the advantages and disadvantages that I've mentioned here. There could be more advantages, more disadvantages based on the situation that you are in. So it is up to you to choose on the situation that you are in of which method that you would want to adopt. Now, this is also something what the psychologists, counseling psychologists, especially clinical psychologists, counselors help you to do in the therapy process. In fact, sometimes people may even start this early on so that by the time you want to use this in your daily life, that you have a certain amount of practice to do so. So often this emotional regulation is done by many counseling psychologists. They help you through the process. The advantage of counseling is that you are in a face-to-face conversation one-on-one with another person. So it tends to be a more appropriate approach, more efficient and effective approach because it's custom made according to your needs. Right? So the individual sessions tend to have this advantage. And also group sessions also the same. In a group session, what would happen is people with similar challenges come together, so you get different views. So that's the counseling process, which helps you through the same thing to regulate your emotions. That's like a major part of most of the counseling sessions. So now we bring this all together and try to understand why we did what all we did till now. So we learned about locus of control. In a simple word, it's about focusing on the process rather than the result, because the process is within our control and the result is not within our control. Of course, you will see this idea in all sorts of religions, all sorts of philosophies, but the implementation of this idea is a little difficult because of lack of emotional regulation. Like if you are imbalanced emotionally, then how can you even think about this concept of locus of control? Why would you even focus on what is in your control? And then we spoke about the factors involved in locus of control, which involve certain physical factors, certain physical barriers to control, psychological barriers, and cultural barriers. Like for instance, if you're living in a culture that sort of looks down on men crying, looks down on women getting angry, of course we need a sort of more societal level of change for a better mental health. But these are some of the factors that can hinder your control. But personally, you have control. To have control over yourself, you need to have certain amount of emotional regulation. And how emotion regulation can help in focusing on internal locus of control. And basically, like how I mentioned, to focus on the process and regulate emotions appropriately. So now these two concepts, if they are used together, it in itself can provide a huge relief in terms of your mental health, in terms of improving your mental health. Now when I have presented it, it is presented in a way that religion is not involved in it, and in a way that philosophy is also certain to some extent is removed from it. But you can use it in any form. If you find that similar things are there in your religion, you can use it as per your religious practice. If you're an agnostic or an atheist, you can take it as it is from that perspective. So this is not divided in terms of religion or community or culture. This is based on what we have found out over the years of research in mental health, and this is what generally psychologists help people in doing, that is to regulate your emotions and to focus on what is in their control so that they can have a better mental health. So here there is a quote, again it's from a philosopher, from where this concept was inspired for the psychologists who developed it. There is only one way to happiness, and that is to cease worrying about the things which are beyond the power of our will. This is basically what we are talking about. So I hope this concept inspires you to take a step closer to better mental health. I wish you all the best and a happy new year.